My name is Peggy Whitfield, and at 68 years old, I thought I had finally earned a quiet Christmas. For once, I wasn't rushing, I wasn't shopping for other people, and I wasn't waiting for a last-minute call to fix someone else's problem. My little house was warm and still that afternoon. The kitchen table was covered in tissue paper and a box of ornaments I had saved from years past. I unwrapped each piece slowly, placing them one by one on the table like old friends. The little porcelain angel that used to sit on top of our tree when my husband was alive. The wooden star Douglas made in fourth grade shop class. The plastic snowman missing an arm because one of the grandkids dropped it a few years back. Every ornament carried a memory. I wasn't planning a big tree anymore. At my age, hauling one in from the lot was too much. Instead, I bought a small tabletop tree from the nursery down the road, just big enough for me. I had set out my nativity set too, simple figures carved from wood that my sister gave me more than 40 years ago. I arranged Mary and Joseph, then carefully placed the baby Jesus figure in the center. It was quiet, almost peaceful. I thought, maybe this year will finally be the year I rest. I would go to Christmas Eve service, cook myself a small ham, and spend the holiday exactly the way I wanted, calm, simple, and without drama. I had just lit a candle when my phone buzzed on the counter. At first, I ignored it, but then I saw the screen. A voicemail had come through. The number showed as Douglas's cell. I figured he was calling to check in. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and pressed play. What I heard stopped me cold. Douglas's voice came first, low but clear. Mom won't mind. She never says no. We'll just drop the kids at her place on Christmas Eve, and she can handle them until New Year's. Then Michelle's voice chimed in, sharper, almost annoyed. 5 kids, Douglas. 5. And you know she can't keep up with them anymore. But at least it's free. If we had to pay a sitter for a whole week, we couldn't afford Florida. Douglas chuckled like it was nothing. She'll do it. She always does. She's too soft to push back. Then Michelle again, her words slicing through me. Exactly. That's why I married you. Your mom is dependable. She'll cancel her silly little plans. She'll never say no. The message clicked off. For a long moment, I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at the counter like the phone had burned me. My hands shook. I replayed the voicemail, just to be sure I had heard it right. Their voices filled my kitchen again, matter of fact, already planning my Christmas without asking me. I sat down at the table, the candle flickering beside the nativity. My eyes landed on that wooden star Douglas made when he was just a boy. I remembered him bringing it home from school, proud as could be, his face glowing when I hung it on the tree. I had given my life to raising that boy, helping him through school, supporting his career. I had welcomed Michelle like a daughter. And now, here they were, plotting behind my back, treating me like a built-in babysitter. Not family, not a respected mother or grandmother, just cheap labor. I thought about those 5 children, my grandchildren. I love them, of course, but 5 kids for a whole week by myself? At my age? That wasn't love. That was exhaustion. That was sleepless nights, meals to cook, fights to break up, toys to trip over, laundry piled high. That was more than I could carry. And they knew it. They didn't care. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling the sting settle in deeper. It wasn't just about the babysitting. It was about what it meant. They assumed my life was small, unimportant, disposable, that I would give up my peace at the snap of their fingers. I wanted to cry, but anger came first. My son, my only son, who I had sacrificed so much for, was laughing about how predictable I was. And Michelle, she spoke about me like I was some appliance that would always be plugged in and ready to go. She'll cancel her silly little plans. That phrase clung to me, because the truth was I did have plans. Simple, yes, but they mattered to me. I wanted to sit in church on Christmas Eve without worrying about little hands tugging at my coat. I wanted to read by the fire with a cup of tea, not chase toddlers around the living room. I wanted to wake up on Christmas morning in peace, not to the sound of 5 different voices fighting over presents. I sat there in the glow of that candle and realized this wasn't about helping anymore. This was about being used. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Michelle. No hello, no warm words. Just a list. We'll drop the kids off at 5 p.m. Christmas Eve. Flight is at 8. We'll pick them up January 2nd. Thanks, Peggy. No question mark. No, would you mind? No, can you manage? Just a statement. As if I had already agreed. As if my time belonged to them. My stomach tightened. My throat felt dry. I looked around my quiet little house and thought, do they even see me as a person anymore? I looked down at the baby Jesus in the nativity scene, a symbol of family, love, and sacrifice. I thought about what sacrifice really meant. I had given so much, but was I meant to keep giving until I had nothing left of myself? In that moment, one thing became clear. This Christmas wasn't going to go the way Douglas and Michelle expected. Not this year. After that text from Michelle, I sat in my chair for a long time. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? How did I raise a son who thinks of me more as a service than a mother? And then I realized it wasn't just Douglas and Michelle's doing. I had played a part in it. The truth is, I've been the dependable one all my life. 10 years ago, when my husband passed, I thought life would slow down. He was my partner in everything, and losing him left me with a quiet I didn't know how to handle. But instead of resting, I poured myself into helping Douglas. He was just starting out back then, still struggling to finish law school. Tuition was high, rent was steep, and he was always calling with worries about bills. I remember selling my wedding china to help him cover one semester. I told myself it was an investment in his future, that one day he'd look back and thank me. I picked up part-time bookkeeping work after I retired, just so I could slip him money without him feeling embarrassed. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth was, I didn't want him to struggle. That's what mothers do, right? We step in. Then came Michelle. At first, I liked her. She was cheerful, smart, and she made Douglas happy. But life tested her early. She had a health scare not long after their first child was born. I was the one who drove her to every appointment, stayed overnight when Douglas couldn't get off work, and cooked meals for the house so she wouldn't have to. I didn't mind. I wanted her to feel supported. I told myself I was building trust, making sure she knew I was in her corner. But then the favors kept stacking up. Douglas and Michelle bought a house that was too big for their budget. I knew it the second I walked through the door. Shiny new appliances, but the mortgage payments were heavy. They ran up credit cards trying to keep up. One night Douglas called close to tears. They were drowning in debt. And what did I do? I pulled from my own savings the money my husband and I had set aside for retirement trips we never took, and I paid off a chunk of their balance. They promised to pay me back, but that day hasn't come. Looking back now, I see a pattern. Every time there was a crisis, I was the one to fix it. Need childcare? Call Mom. Can't pay a bill? Call Mom. Stuck with a car repair? Mom will figure it out. And I never said no. I always found a way. Sometimes I told myself it was love. Sometimes I told myself it was my duty as a mother. Other times, I admitted quietly that it was guilt. Guilt that maybe I hadn't given Douglas enough when he was younger. Guilt that I couldn't keep his father alive longer. Guilt that I lived alone while they were raising 5 kids and trying to make ends meet. Guilt is a powerful thing. It makes you agree when your heart is screaming no. I think about the holidays past. I can't remember the last Christmas I spent exactly how I wanted. Every year it was me baking dozens of cookies with the kids, even when my knees ached from standing. Every year it was me staying up late to wrap presents because Douglas and Michelle were too tired. I never once got to sit back with a hot cup of cocoa and watch a movie by myself. I was always in motion, always serving. And what did it teach them? That mom will always show up. That grandma's plans don't matter. That her time isn't her own. Now here I was at 68, with a voicemail in my phone proving that the very people I had sacrificed for were mocking me for it. Douglas laughing about how I'd never push back. Michelle saying I'd cancel my silly little plans. I felt the sting because they were right. That's exactly what I'd done over and over again. I thought back to when Douglas was little. I worked nights at the library, then shelving books and checking out late returns, just so I could be home during the day with him. We didn't have much, but I tried to give him stability. I wanted him to know I'd always be there. Maybe I made that promise too well. Maybe he grew up believing that no matter how old he got, I'd still be there to catch him. I remember one time Michelle said to me, half joking but with a sharp edge, "Peggy, you've spoiled Douglas. He doesn't know how to solve his own problems." I laughed it off then, but she wasn't wrong. And now, instead of him growing more independent, it feels like they both leaned further into it. I can't count how many times I've skipped things I wanted because they needed me. I missed Ruth's retirement party because Douglas and Michelle had a last-minute trip and needed me to watch the kids. I missed 2 senior group outings to the lake because Michelle had her second baby, and I was basically living at their house for weeks. I never complained out loud, but I felt it. The missed chances stacked up one by one. And now this. They didn't even ask. They planned my Christmas for me without so much as a question. I stared at that nativity scene on my table, the little carved figures looking back at me. Family is supposed to mean love, respect, support, not assumption, not entitlement, not treating someone as a resource to be used until it runs dry. The weight of it all pressed down on me that night. Years of choices, years of sacrifice, years of swallowing my own needs. I thought I was being a good mother, a good grandmother. But sitting there in my quiet house, I had to wonder, was I really just the built-in help all along? By Friday, I decided to wait and speak in person. Douglas always hosted Sunday dinner. I baked an apple pie, kept my voice steady, and drove to their house in the suburbs. Michelle opened the door with a big smile and a quick hug. "Peggy, you look great," she said, taking the pie. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rolls. On the counter lay glossy brochures, palm trees, blue water, Ocean View Resort across the top. 2 new beach bags sat beside them with tags still on. The kids ran in circles. One tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, Mommy says you're watching us at Christmas while they go to Florida." He sounded thrilled, like it was already settled. I smiled for him and told him to wash up. We sat down. Douglas poured me water and talked about work, the weather, the furnace at my house. Michelle set down pasta and said, "So glad you're here. The kids missed you." She slid the brochures under a mail stack. I waited for quiet and spoke plainly. "I got a message from your phone. It sounded like you were planning to leave the kids with me for a week." Michelle laughed, high and fast. "Oh, Peggy, you must have misunderstood. We were just talking out loud." Douglas nodded. "Yeah, Mom, just brainstorming. Only if you're up for it." I kept my eyes on him. A text followed with dates and times. "That's not brainstorming." Michelle's smile thinned. "We were going to ask you tonight. We thought it'd be nicer in person." From the living room, the youngest called, "Is Florida far?" The room went still. Douglas cleared his throat. "Kids hear everything," he said. "I love you all," I said. "I need to be clear." A week alone with 5 kids is not something I can do. Douglas leaned back, gave his smoothing smile. Mom, you handle them better than any sitter. It would save us a pile of money. Flights are already booked. Michelle added, they sleep through the night. You'll have a schedule. She handed me a printed list. No question marks anywhere. I set the paper down. This is a job for 2 adults. Or paid help. I am one person. We can't afford a sitter for a whole week, she said. It's Christmas. Rates are insane. Then the trip isn't in the budget, I said. Douglas gave a short laugh. We deserve a break. You always say family supports each other. Support isn't the same as being taken for granted. I said, you didn't ask. You announced. Michelle waved a hand. We were trying not to stress you. Details make you anxious. What makes me anxious is being told what I will do, I said, folding the schedule once. The older kids started clearing plates. I carried the littlest to the sink. In the kitchen, I saw the travel folder. The reservation email showed the exact dates. At the table, Douglas tried a softer tone. Mom, we trust you. The kids are safe with you. You know their routines. I know them because I've been here when you needed me, I said. That doesn't mean my time belongs to you. Michelle crossed her arms. So you're saying no? I'm saying I can't do a full week. Not at Christmas. Douglas sighed. Okay, then 4 days. We'll drop them the 24th and be back the 28th. That's fair. It isn't fair if I don't agree, I said. And I don't. Silence. One child whispered, Are we still going to see the pool? I stood and thanked them for dinner. I have an early morning, I said. Michelle followed with the pie pan. No hard feelings, she said lightly. We'll figure it out. At the door, I put on my coat. Douglas gave me a brief hug, eyes sliding away. Text me when you get home, he said. In the car, I breathed and took the long way home. At my house, I laid the folded schedule beside the nativity. I felt small and steady at the same time. Hurt, yes. Humiliated, yes. But clear. I was not going to bend this time. Michelle returned with dessert plates and set one before me, though I hadn't asked. You've always done Christmas with the kids, she said. Traditions matter. Traditions don't require 7 days, I said. I can host Coco and a movie. I cannot do round the clock. Douglas rubbed his temples. Mom, please don't make this a thing. We already told them. If we cancel, they'll be crushed. They'll be disappointed. I said, crushed is when bills can't be paid or someone is sick. This is a vacation. Michelle's eyes tightened. We work hard. We need rest. You have free time. I have time because I paid my dues. I said, rest isn't a gift I owe you. Douglas tried again. We'll leave cash for groceries. It isn't about groceries, I said. It's about respect. Silence. The youngest hummed a carol. I picked up my purse. At the threshold, Michelle touched my arm. Sleep on it, Peggy. You'll feel different tomorrow. I'll feel the same, I said. Outside, cold air cleared my head. As I pulled away, a text from Douglas popped up. We can talk tomorrow. Love you. I stared at the word love and wondered when it started coming with conditions. At home, I washed the pie dish and slid the schedule into a drawer. I stood by the nativity and asked for wisdom. Then I went to bed with my jaw set, knowing I would need it. I lay awake a while, replaying dinner, the schedule, the brochures. The pattern was clear. If I stayed silent, nothing would change. I would change. Starting now with me. Would you have walked out like I did, or would you have swallowed your pride and stayed to keep the peace? Share this video if you've ever left a family gathering with tears in your eyes. And if you think I was wrong, comment and tell me, because silence is exactly how they get away with it. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table staring at that folded schedule in the drawer. My coffee went cold while my thoughts turned circles. Part of me wanted to stay quiet, give in like always, and avoid the fight. But the other part, the part that still had some self-respect left, knew I needed to talk to people I trusted. The first person I thought of was Ruth, my neighbor across the street. She's been a widow a little longer than me. We lean on each other, whether it's borrowing sugar, picking up each other's mail, or just talking at the fence. That morning I walked over, wrapped in my coat, carrying nothing but the weight of my thoughts. Ruth was sweeping her porch. When she saw my face, she leaned her broom against the rail. "Peggy, what's wrong?" she asked. I told her everything, the voicemail, the scheduled text, the Sunday dinner where the kids spilled the beans. By the time I finished, Ruth's lips were pressed tight. "Peggy," she said, shaking her head, "we've raised our kids. We're not built-in nannies. It's one thing to help for an evening or if there's an emergency, but a whole week during Christmas? That's not helping. That's being taken for granted." Her words settled heavy, but also comforting. I don't want to hurt them. I admitted. They're my family. Family doesn't give orders, Ruth said firmly. Family asks, and if they love you, they respect your answer. We went inside her kitchen. She poured me tea while I sat at her table, the same place we've shared so many talks before. She told me about her own daughter, who once dropped off 2 kids for a weekend and disappeared for 4 days without a word. I never said a thing then, Ruth said, but it taught her she could do it again. That was my mistake. I nodded, thinking of my years of silence. "So what did you do?" I asked. The next time she hinted, I said no. Ruth said. And guess what? She found another way. They always do when they have to. Her words lingered in my chest. Saying no didn't mean the world fell apart. It just meant boundaries. That evening, I went to Bible study at church. My friends Frank and Alice were there, a couple who've been married almost 50 years. We've been part of the same church family for decades, sharing meals, funerals, weddings, and everything in between. After the lesson ended, I pulled them aside. I told them, too, about Douglas and Michelle's plan. Alice squeezed my hand. "Oh, Peggy," she said softly, "you are not alone. Our son tried the same thing with us a few years ago. He assumed we'd watch their 3 kids every Saturday, so they could go out. It got so bad, we had no weekends to ourselves." Frank chuckled, though not happily. They acted like we were the babysitting service down the street. Finally, Alice put her foot down. She told them flat out, "Our time is not free just because we're retired. We worked our whole lives for this time." And did it cause a big fight? I asked. It ruffled feathers for a while, Alice admitted, but it forced them to figure out their own childcare. And now, when they ask, it's with respect. And we decide when we say yes. Frank leaned closer. "Peggy, guilt is the chain that keeps us tied. But guilt doesn't raise their kids. That's their job." I sat there, listening to people who had lived it and survived. I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Permission to protect my own peace. On the way home, I thought about how many of us older women get stuck in this pattern. We spent decades running households, raising children, fixing problems. Then suddenly, we're expected to keep doing it forever. Retirement isn't rest. It just shifts the work from our jobs to our family's demands. Nobody talks about it much, but it's real. That night, I pulled out a notebook. I wrote down everything Ruth, Frank, and Alice had said. I wrote the sentence that stuck most, "We are not built-in nannies." As I wrote, my anger softened into something steadier. Determination. For the first time since hearing that voicemail, I believed I had a choice. I didn't have to cave. I didn't have to ruin my Christmas just to give them a vacation. I set my pen down and looked at the nativity on my table again. Family should be built on love and respect. And if I wanted my grandchildren to see that, I needed to show it with my own actions. Before bed, I called Ruth to thank her. She said, "Peggy, remember this. Saying no doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you an honest one." I lay in bed thinking about her words, about Frank and Alice's story, about all the women I know who quietly carry more than they should. We love our families, but love without limits turns into duty, and duty without respect turns into being used. I promised myself that night I would not let this Christmas become another example of me giving in. I was done being predictable. It scared me, but it also gave me strength. 2 days later, my phone buzzed while I was folding laundry. It was from Michelle. I figured it might be a polite follow-up after Sunday dinner, maybe a softened version of what they had tried to push on me. But when I opened it, I realized just how wrong I was. It wasn't a question. It was a list, a detailed, typed-out schedule that looked like something a camp counselor would hand out to staff. The message read, "Drop-off Christmas Eve, 5 p.m. Dinner, chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, pizza rotation. Bedtime, 8:30 sharp for the little ones, 9:30 for the older two. No sugar after 6 p.m. Movies, Elf, Home Alone, Polar Express. They've seen Grinch already. Breakfast, cereal and fruit. Lunches, turkey sandwiches. Keep dinners simple. Limit screen time to 2 hours daily. Baths every other night. Pick up January 2nd, evening." The message ended with, "Thanks again, Peggy. We know we can count on you. Merry Christmas." No, would you mind? No, does this work for you? Just a full week of orders. I stared at the screen. My hands trembled, not from age, but from pure anger. They weren't even pretending to ask anymore. They had decided, and my job was to fall in line. What made it worse was how Michelle had framed it, like I was some hired nanny, except without the pay. The tone was businesslike, clipped, efficient. It wasn't family. It wasn't love. It was entitlement. I set the phone on the counter and walked to the living room. The Christmas cards I'd received from friends were pinned neatly along the mantel, cards filled with words like peace, joy, hope. I looked at them and thought, where's the peace in being treated like this? Where's the joy in being ordered around? That afternoon, I was supposed to meet my senior club at the community center. We had planned a simple Christmas potluck and a gift exchange. I'd been looking forward to it, sitting with people my age, laughing, swapping recipes, sharing stories. It was the kind of thing that gave me energy. But Michelle's message made one thing clear. She expected me to cancel. I imagined texting the group, "Sorry, can't come. Babysitting grandkids for 9 days." I could almost hear the sympathetic sighs, the knowing looks, because every one of those women has been in my shoes. They've all been asked to give up their own lives so their adult children could have more freedom. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't an ask. This was an expectation so strong that Michelle assumed I would set aside my life, again, without hesitation. I opened my phone and scrolled back to that voicemail, the one I'd been avoiding listening to again because it hurt too much the first time. But this time, I pressed play. Douglas's voice filled the room. "Mom won't mind. She never says no. We'll just drop the kids at her place." Michelle's reply followed, sharp as glass. 5 kids, Douglas. But at least it's free. Then Douglas chuckling. "She'll do it. She always does." The words that stung most came next. Michelle's voice cold and confident. "She'll cancel her silly little plans. She'll never say no." I let the message play twice. The first time, it felt like salt in a wound. The second time, it sparked something else. Anger. Not the kind that burns out quick. The kind that steadies you. They thought I would cancel my silly little plans. Plans that mattered to me, even if they didn't matter to them. They saw my life as small. disposable, empty unless I was filling it with service to them. I sat back in my chair and whispered to myself, not this year. For so long, I had believed that saying yes was the only way to show love. But what had it taught them? That my time had no value, that I would always bend, always adjust, always sacrifice. I thought of Ruth's words, "We're not built-in nannies." I thought of Alice telling me guilt is the chain that keeps us tied. I picked up a pen and started writing in my notebook. At the top, I wrote, what I want for Christmas. My list was short. Attend Christmas Eve service. Share a meal with friends. Sleep in my own bed without interruption. Rest. Simple things. Modest things. Things that meant peace. Then I wrote a second list, what they want from me. That list filled the page. Every meal, every bedtime, every rule, every need. Looking at the two lists side by side, the truth was clear. Their Christmas came at the cost of mine. I closed the notebook and looked at the nativity on my table. The baby Jesus figure rested there, tiny and fragile. Family was supposed to be about care, love, and respect. But where was the respect in being ordered around like help? I felt a calm settle over me. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt, I was ready. That night, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to spend Christmas cleaning up messes and breaking up arguments. I wasn't going to miss my senior club's potluck. I wasn't going to sit in my house exhausted while Douglas and Michelle sipped cocktails in Florida. I said it out loud, just to hear the strength in my own voice. I'm changing my plans. I stood at my sink and read Michelle's schedule again from top to bottom. It was written like a memo to staff. Times, tasks, meals, even what movies I was allowed to play. It didn't sound like family. It sounded like orders. I set the phone down and let the quiet fill the room. I could either swallow it like I always had or do something new. I picked up my address book and called Ruth. You busy on Christmas? I asked. Only if eating pie counts, she said. Why? I'm thinking of getting away for a few days. Just a small trip. I'm listening, she said. Maybe somewhere warm. No obligations. Slow mornings, early nights. Ruth laughed. Say the word, and I'm in. Let me look into it and call you back, I said. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table with my notebook. I wrote 2 columns, yes and no. Under yes, I listed the things I wanted. Church on Christmas Eve. Rest, a short break, time with Ruth. Under no, I listed what I refused. 9 straight days of childcare, last-minute demands, being told what to do. My mind went back to Sunday dinner. One of the grandkids had blurted it out in front of everyone. We're going to the Ocean View Resort in Florida. The name was clear as day. I opened my laptop and typed it into the search bar. The resort's website popped up. Photos of blue water, a long pool with a little bridge, big palm trees. There was a book now button. I clicked. A calendar opened to December. Most dates showed sold out. I kept clicking through. Christmas week had a few openings in standard rooms, and there it was, one listing for a family suite. Sleep 7. Only one left. I stared at the screen. The price made me catch my breath. It wasn't cheap. I closed my eyes and let the thought come all the way in. For years, I had solved their problems and pushed mine to the side. I had said yes when it was hard. I had paid bills I didn't know. I had given time I could never get back. And now I had proof that they were sure I'd never change. I told myself I was just looking. But I wasn't. I knew exactly what I was doing. At first, I planned a simple no. I would send a clear text, book a quiet place nearby with Ruth, and move on. But as I sat there, the anger turned into something steadier. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. They had counted on me being predictable. They had counted on me folding. I didn't want to match their meanness. I wanted to match their certainty with my own. I clicked reserve. My heart thumped hard. The page asked for my name, card, and email. I typed each line carefully and checked every box. Family suite, December 24th to December 31st. Fully refundable until 7 days prior. Non-refundable after that. The policy was clear. They had chosen those dates. If I hadn't made this move, I knew I would be home cooking chicken nuggets and arguing bedtimes while they rested by that very pool. I hit confirm. A spinning circle appeared. Then a green check mark. A message popped up. Reservation confirmed. Confirmation number. I printed it and set the page on the table, hands steady. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. Next, I looked for a smaller room for Ruth and me at the same resort. We didn't need anything fancy. A double room with 2 beds was enough. The price was manageable. I booked that too. Same dates, 2 names, same floor request if available. Another green check mark. I printed that confirmation as well. I bookmarked the cancellation policy and saved the receipts in a folder on my desktop labeled Christmas Plans. I also took photos of both confirmations on my phone and emailed copies to myself. I wasn't hiding anything from myself. I was keeping records because I had learned the hard way that when people are shocked by your boundaries, they claim you never said or didn't plan. I was prepared. I called Ruth. "Pack a swimsuit and some comfortable shoes," I said. She hooped. "Florida?" "Yes. And I've got it covered. We'll keep to ourselves, read, sit in the sun, and be in bed early." "Bless you," she said. "I'll water your plants and grab our printed boarding passes. I'll also tell my son we're off the grid for a few days. If he needs childcare, he can call someone else." We laughed because we both knew how that went. I made a short list of practical steps. I set my utilities to autopay, put a hold on my mail online, and texted my neighbor across the street to keep an eye on the porch. I arranged a ride to the airport with a woman from church who liked the early drive. I also printed a simple itinerary for myself: flight numbers, resort address, Ruth's number. I didn't tell Douglas or Michelle a word, not out of sneakiness, but because I was done explaining myself to people who had already decided I didn't matter. I wasn't the one leaving anyone stranded. I was the one stopping a pattern. I went to my closet and pulled out a small suitcase. I set it on the bed and opened my dresser drawers. I chose comfortable clothes, an extra sweater, my old sun hat, sandals, and my church dress for Christmas Eve. I tucked in my Bible and the paperback I'd been saving. I added a pair of earplugs and my favorite tea bags. I slid in the folder with the printed confirmations. Then I sat and made one more list. What if they show up angry? What if they try to guilt me? What if they bring the kids and their suitcases and force my hand? I answered each question in writing. If they show up angry, I won't engage. If they try guilt, I will repeat my boundary once. If they bring the kids, I will not take them in. I will call a taxi and go to the airport early. I copied the taxi number next to my phone. I stood and looked at my small bedroom. For once, I felt in charge of it. My life had been about reacting. This was about acting. If they could plan a vacation without asking me, I could plan one without telling them. Before dinner, I walked to Ruth's to bring her the flight times. She opened the door with her suitcase half packed on the couch and a grin on her face. "Look at us," she said. "2 women with a plan." "We'll keep it quiet," I said. "No bragging. No warnings. We owe nobody a speech." "Agreed," she said. "And Peggy, good for you." Back home, I set my suitcase by the front door. I laid my church shawl on top, ready for Christmas Eve service wherever we could find one. I checked the resort's website for holiday chapel times. They had a small service listed with simple carols. That was enough. I made a simple supper and put my phone on the counter. A text came from Douglas. We need to finalize details. Can we drop them at 4:30 instead of 5? I didn't answer. An hour later, Michelle, please confirm you read the schedule. We're counting on you. Still, I stayed quiet. I wasn't playing tug of war by text. The boundary would be set in person. I washed the last dish, dried my hands, and went to the table. The nativity was there, steady as ever. I moved the baby Jesus figure a little closer to Mary and Joseph. I thought about what love looks like when it grows up. It's not endless giving until you're empty. It's care with clarity. It's showing your family how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I looked at the printed reservation for the family suite and felt a flicker of mischief I hadn't felt in years. They had counted on me being predictable. Fine, let them count again, I whispered. If they think I'm predictable, they're about to learn I can play my own game. I turned off the kitchen light, checked the locks, and stood at the door with my suitcase ready. I didn't know exactly how the next part would go. I just knew I wasn't going back to the old way. I was keeping my Christmas, my peace, and my word to myself. Then I lifted the suitcase handle and set it quietly by the entry rug, all packed for what came next. Christmas Eve came cold and gray. I woke early, showered, and dressed in my best church coat. My suitcase was already packed by the door, my documents zipped inside. Ruth was set to pick me up around 6, so we could head to the airport together. All day, I moved calmly. I baked a small batch of cookies, tidied my living room, watered my plant. I felt no rush, no panic. For the first time in years, Christmas Eve didn't feel like work. It felt like a door opening. At exactly 4:45, I heard tires crunch in my driveway. I pulled the curtain slightly and saw Douglas's minivan. The side door slid open and out tumbled backpacks, toys, coats, and 5 children, all excited and loud. Michelle stepped out first in a new coat, phone in hand. Douglas followed, hauling a stack of luggage. I opened the door before they could knock. Evening, I said. My suitcase stood beside me, upright and ready. Mom. Thank God, Douglas said, carrying 2 roller bags up the steps. Flight got bumped up. We're in a rush. Take off your boots, kids, Michelle called over her shoulder. Grandma's house, Grandma's rules. She looked at me, half distracted. You'll be fine. Everything's on the schedule I sent. I didn't move aside. Leave the bags out there, I said. Michelle blinked. What? Douglas gave me a puzzled look. Mom, we don't have time. TSA will be a mess tonight. I kept my voice calm. I need you both to listen carefully. I will not be babysitting this Christmas. I have my own plans. The kids froze on the porch, holding stuffed animals and pillows. Michelle's eyes widened. What do you mean you won't be babysitting? We already booked our trip. I mean what I said. I replied. I'm leaving too. My suitcase is packed. You're selfish. Michelle snapped. 5 kids. Peggy, you're going to abandon your own grandchildren on Christmas Eve. Douglas stepped forward, his tone softer but full of pressure. Mom, family comes first. You're abandoning us if you walk away like this. I looked straight at him. Family comes first. That's what I've lived by my whole life. I've given rides, paid bills, watched your children, cooked meals, and kept your house running more times than I can count. I love you, but love doesn't mean I have to give up myself every single time. I deserve one Christmas where I rest. Michelle's voice rose. You think resting is more important than your grandchildren? What's wrong with you? I didn't raise mine. What's wrong is assuming I'll cancel my life without asking. What's wrong is deciding for me. What's wrong is treating me like hired help without pay. Douglas set down a suitcase with a thud. Mom, please. The kids are excited. They've been looking forward to this trip. Don't punish them. I shook my head. I'm not punishing them. I'm teaching them that Grandma has limits. I will see them again. I will love them always. But I will not be left holding the bag while you two sit by a pool in Florida. Michelle let out a laugh that had no humor in it. You can't be serious. You can't just say no when we've planned everything. We need this break. I stepped forward slightly, steadying my coat. You need to take responsibility. That's what parents do. I already raised my son. Raising your children is your job, not mine. The silence on the porch was thick. The kids glanced between us, sensing the tension. I took a deep breath, and with a small smile, I gave them the final piece. Oh, and you might have trouble finding another place in Florida. The Ocean View Resort is completely booked that week. I should know. I booked the last family suite myself. The grandkids, and I might enjoy the pool while Ruth and I relax. You'll just have to find somewhere else to go. The words hung in the air like bells. Douglas's mouth opened, but no sound came. His face drained of color. Michelle nearly screamed, her voice breaking. You did what? I booked it, I said evenly, with my own money. I decided I deserved it. So, the Ocean View suite is mine now. Ruth and I will be there. You won't. Douglas shook his head slowly, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Mom, that's unbelievable. What's unbelievable, I said, is planning your Christmas around dumping 5 kids on your mother without her consent. What's unbelievable is mocking me on a voicemail and then assuming I'd cancel my plans because you decided mine didn't matter. Michelle stomped her boot on the porch. You're vindictive. You ruined our Christmas on purpose. No, I replied, steady as stone. I saved mine. The kids shifted uncomfortably, sensing their parents' anger. I softened my tone for them. Don't worry, darlings. Grandma's going to church and then heading to Florida with Ruth. You'll have Christmas with your mom and dad, where you belong. Douglas's shoulders slumped. He looked at the ground. Michelle muttered under her breath, but I didn't lean in to hear. I had said what I came to say. Just then, headlights swept across the driveway. Ruth's old sedan pulled up, trunk already open. She got out, cheerful and steady, and waved. Ready, Peggy? I reached for my suitcase handle. Yes, I said. Douglas finally found words. You're making a huge mistake. We'll never forget this. I paused at the top of the steps, turned back, and met his eyes. Neither will I. Then I wheeled my suitcase down the walk, each step firm. Ruth took it from me, loaded it into her trunk, and patted my arm. I climbed into the passenger seat. Through the windshield, I saw them still standing on the porch, children clutching pillows, parents too stunned to move. Michelle's face was twisted with disbelief. Douglas looked lost. Ruth started the engine. All set, she asked. All set, I answered, buckling my belt. We pulled away as the house shrank in the rearview mirror. My heart pounded, but not from fear, from freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending. I wasn't caving. I wasn't the built-in help. I was a woman with her own plan, and I left them standing there, speechless, as Christmas Eve began without me. Now, tell me honestly, was I cruel or was I right? Share this video if you think parents need to hear the word no sometimes. And if you believe I ruined Christmas, then say it in the comments. Don't just watch in silence. Tell me why you think mothers should always be the ones to sacrifice. By the time Ruth and I reached the airport, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages from Douglas, then Michelle, one after another. At first, they were demanding, "Where are you? We're going to miss our flight." Then they shifted to pleading, "Please just keep them tonight. We'll figure something out later." Finally, the tone turned sharp again. "You'll regret this, Peggy." I slid the phone into my purse and decided not to answer a single one. Ruth and I boarded our evening flight with no rush, no children crying, no bags of toys to keep track of. Just two women carrying small suitcases and paperbacks. The flight attendants smiled when they saw our calm faces. I sat back, closed my eyes, and for the first time in many Christmases, felt light. The next morning, while Ruth and I were sipping coffee in the resort lobby, I checked the news from home. Sure enough, Douglas and Michelle had missed their flight. A friend from church, who knew one of Michelle's cousins, sent me a message saying they were scrambling to find anyone willing to watch 5 kids at the last minute. Nobody wanted that responsibility during the holidays. Their trip had fallen apart before it even started. By afternoon, I heard more details through the grapevine. Michelle had bragged weeks earlier about how easy it was to have free babysitting lined up. She told her friends that I would cancel anything for them. Now, those same friends were shaking their heads. One even told Ruth's daughter that it served them right. The story spread quicker than I expected, and by Christmas morning, half the community knew. Meanwhile, Ruth and I walked down to the beach. The sun warmed our faces, the water sparkled, and the breeze carried a peace I hadn't felt in years. We didn't chase after anyone. We didn't cook for a crowd. We simply sat with books in hand and toes in the sand. That evening we found the small chapel service listed in the resort flyer. It wasn't big or fancy, but the candlelight was soft and the carols familiar. When the choir sang Silent Night, I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me. No one tugged at my arm. No one whispered about bedtime. No one handed me a list of chores. Just peace. After the service, we joined other travelers in the courtyard. People laughed, children ran in circles, couples clinked glasses. For once, I was part of the moment, not the one holding it together for everyone else. Ruth leaned over and whispered, "Peggy, you look 10 years younger." I laughed, but inside I knew she was right. The following days passed quietly. We walked the boardwalk, ate simple breakfasts at the cafe, and turned in early most nights. Sometimes we sat in silence. Other times we shared stories about our husbands, our kids, the choices we'd made over the years. Ruth said something that stuck with me. When we give without limits, they stop seeing it as giving. They see it as owed. Back home, Douglas and Michelle were still facing the fallout. Word reached me that they had argued in front of friends about whose idea it was to count on me. Their children were confused and upset, asking why they weren't on vacation like they had been promised. They tried to explain, but the truth slipped out. Grandma said no. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Life had done the teaching for me. On the last night of the trip, the resort hosted a sing-along around a fire pit. Ruth and I joined in, our voices not perfect, but full. I laughed until tears rolled down my cheeks when a group of kids started dancing wildly to Jingle Bells. No stress, no obligation, just joy. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about the past few years. Every Christmas had been rushed, loud, and exhausting. This one was different. This one was mine. I felt freedom in my bones, the kind of freedom you don't realize you've lost until you taste it again. I promised myself right then I would never go back to being predictable. I would help when I chose, not when it was demanded. My children and grandchildren would see me as a person with a life, not a service they could schedule. When Ruth and I boarded our flight home, I didn't dread walking back into my house. I felt proud. I had taken my stand. I had shown them that I could draw a line. And for the first time in years, I returned not tired, but renewed. 3 weeks after Ruth and I came back from Florida, there was a knock on my door one quiet afternoon. I opened it and found Douglas standing there alone. No Michelle, no children, just him. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped, a man carrying the weight of regret. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. "I owe you an apology." I sat across from him. "I'm listening." "I took you for granted," he said, his eyes fixed on the carpet. "We both did. I just assumed you'd always say yes. I didn't think about how much we were asking. I didn't think about you." Hearing the words didn't erase the hurt, but it mattered that he was saying them. "Douglas, do you realize what that week would have been for me? 5 kids, 9 days, no rest. That's not fair." "I know," he admitted. "We thought we needed a break, but we never asked if you needed one too. Missing that trip, maybe it was what we deserved." I let the silence stretch. He shifted uncomfortably. Then he added, "I don't want us to be at odds. You're my mother, and I want my kids to grow up respecting you, not taking you for granted like I did." Those words landed. Respect. That's what had been missing all along. I leaned forward. "Douglas, I love you and I love my grandchildren, but things can't go back to the way they were. If you need help, you ask me, not assume. You give me notice, not a schedule. And you understand that sometimes the answer will be no." He nodded quickly. "I understand." "Good," I said, "because I won't be predictable anymore. I won't be the safety net every time. I've got a life too, and I plan to live it." For the first time that day, he smiled faintly. "You surprised us, Mom. Booking that resort." Michelle's still in shock. "I did what I had to do," I said. "Maybe now you'll think twice before deciding my time for me." We talked a little longer about the kids, school, and the weather. When he left, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. "Thank you for giving me another chance," he said. I watched him walk to his car, a little lighter, a little wiser. I closed the door and felt something I hadn't in a long while, peace. Later that week, I packed away my Christmas decorations. Each piece went back into its box, carefully wrapped. When I placed the wooden nativity figures back into their tissue paper, I paused at the baby Jesus and smiled. This year had been different. This year had been mine. As I taped the lid shut, I felt something else too, anticipation. Next Christmas wouldn't be dictated by anyone else. I was already planning my holiday on my terms. Now, before I end my story, let me turn to you, the one listening. Have you ever felt used by the people you love most? Have you ever been expected to sacrifice your peace just because you've always done it before? At what point do we stop being the safety net and start living our own lives? I'd love to know your thoughts. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Do you think I went too far booking that resort, or do you think it was the only way to make them see me clearly? If this story spoke to you, please like this video, share it with a friend who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support means the world, and it helps these stories reach more people who might be living through the same struggles. As for me, I closed the box of decorations and slid it back into the closet. I stood there smiling, not because everything was perfect, but because I knew next year would be different. Next year would be mine from the start, and that, I realized, was the best gift I could give myself.